Welcome everyone to our Sparkshop today, Guiding Graduate Writing. This is part of our Supervision Sparkshop series, 30-minute focused topics for busy graduate supervisors. I'm Tracy Bula, manager of the Graduate Supervision Support Hub here at York University, and I welcome and introduce you to Marlene Bernholtz, associate professor and interim director of the Writing Center here at York University. For our agenda today, we're going to reflect on the challenges grad students face navigating the writing process. We'll also consider challenges supervisors face in guiding their graduate student writing. We'll identify roles, responsibilities, and some key strategies for supporting grad writing. And we'll also share the Writing Center Guide for Graduate Student Support. So, Marlene, what are the key writing related issues that you see graduate students face that surprise you the most?
One of the biggest issues that graduate students face is the one of renegotiating the sort of shifted relationship that they have with their supervisors. So at the Writing Center, we like to think in terms of sort of grounding ourselves with quotes. And this is one that we use as kind of a guideline, which is that academic work is engaging with others. And this work involves empathy, creativity, and the potential construction of an alternative or something new. It is a fundamentally relational and attentive practice involving a range of shifting epistemic and affective orientations. And the something new is this relationship that the supervisor and the student have to create between them. So the shift is toward a more collaborative versus an instructional orientation, and that can be very intimidating for graduate students in particular because they have already gone through a shift from high school to university where they realize that they have to take more responsibility, that their professor is directing them, but in a less specific way than in high school. But the power dynamic is still fairly unequal. Once you enter into a relationship with your supervisor, uh, you need to reconfigure your thinking about that because you're meant to, because the instructor usually, sorry, the supervisor is expecting you to step up, and the grad student may still see themselves very much as a student there to receive instruction and guidance, and that their role is more of a sort of passive receptor. Whereas I think what we're looking for is a more equal relationship where the student will understand their responsibilities and step up to those. And so this can be very difficult to negotiate. The way to accomplish that is to understand each other better, to recognize that there are differing views about how to work and what the meetings between the supervisor and the student will entail, what graduate student writing should look like, and what kinds of mechanisms and steps and processes they need to engage in to accomplish it. So that means that they really have to um, you both have to come to terms with what you're looking for and what you expect. And on top of that, in terms of affective orientations, there are all kinds of anxieties and worries that graduate students have that supervisors may not really expect or recognize because for us, because we've been through this process, we may be comfortable with the process and we feel that, all right, the student knows that I'm here for them or that I will support them, but the student themselves may not quite feel that way. They may feel very isolated because they may be the only one uh, in their family or in their group who has reached this level. They may feel isolated because the work is very individual. They may feel overwhelmed because the idea of a dissertation is quite huge. They may expect so much more from themselves, especially in our presence, that they may be shy or uncomfortable talking about any kind of insecurity or difficulty they're facing. They want to look like they're perfect.
Mhm. Great. Thank you. All right. And the next question, what are some of the key challenges graduate supervisors face when it comes to guiding their students through the writing process?
I think the most important thing that we can communicate to our students is that writing well means entering into a conversation with others. That academic writing in particular calls upon writers not simply to express their own ideas, but to do so as a response to what others have said. So, what does that mean? It means that we have to define our role in the conversation to understand what we can best offer the student to give them the most value. We need to understand what they need, so we need to listen to them,
Mhm.
but we also need to tell them what our own expectations are so that they can work toward the goals that we set together. We also need to make sure that we are listening to them so that, and that can involve prompting and making sure that we're creating a very comfortable environment where the students feel that they can tell us what they're worried about, what they're having difficulty with, so that we can then give them the kind of support that they need, whether that ends up being a bit emotional support or whether it's academic support to say, all right, sounds like you're struggling with X. Here are some resources that will help you. So we're constantly sort of working through that part of the conversation. Another part of the conversation is the kind of feedback we give them when we see their work, but also to the concerns or ideas that they present to us. So one of the key things we have to do is think about responding rather than reacting. And one of the areas that belongs to that is understanding yourself. And for me, for example, I have to make sure I don't react when I hear something that doesn't make sense to me. My face always says, "What are you talking about?" that I that can be off-putting to a student who is afraid already that they're doing something wrong or that maybe they're not good enough or whatever. And so I find it very helpful to be very mindful of what my face is doing. Sometimes I sit on my hands so that I don't react too fast to write all over somebody's paper, and try and take in what is being written, what is being said, so that I can think about what does that mean, not just the sense of it, the logic of it, but what does it mean about what the student is telling me about where they are and how they're thinking and what their approach to the problem might be. And that way I can think more carefully about what kind of feedback might be the most helpful to them. It also means engaging interactively. So not only telling them what I think, but to be asking questions and watching their responses, to be thinking about, to make sure that I'm hearing, but also seeing how they're responding. And out of the idea of this conversation, the most important part is to recognize that no one writes alone. And we need the students to understand that. I think it's very common for grad students to feel that they have to do it by themselves, that asking for help, that coming to you or talking to other students or even other advisors is a sense of is showing weakness. But really, the idea is that it's showing strength, it's exchanging ideas, that although there is a bigger range of voices that they're looking at in their research, that you can help them find ways to work through the voices to understand where they stand on um, whatever objective they have in their research, so that they can be adding value to the conversation rather than repeating it.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. Next slide is identify. So the question here for you, Marlene, is what are some key strategies for supervisors to support student writing?
So what we need to think about is what are we doing when we support student writing? And so that means think about the whole writing act and the writing process and the writing relationships. And Helen Sword puts it beautifully when she says that when we write for others, we engage in conversation with our readers. When we write with others, we work with colleagues toward a common product. When we write among others, we create a community of writers. And in a way, we as supervisors are trying to do all of these things with our students, but also guide them toward the places where they can find these relationships that they need. So I think it starts again with very, very intentionally setting goals and stating expectations, so that we work together with students to articulate what their long-term objectives are and what our expectations are, to talk about our own work style, to talk to them about feedback. What is our preferred way of giving feedback? How do they receive feedback? What would be the most helpful to them? What is, in terms of working style, there are things like, are you very scheduled? Do you like to see things very regularly? Um, the student needs to know that, because they may have a more I, what can I say? A less scheduled approach where they work in spurts. And so they find that, and they know that that's how they work. Well, then that's something to negotiate. It doesn't mean they have to do it your way or you have to do it their way, but then work together to say, okay, well, that doesn't work very well for me. I need this constant contact. Okay, then you say, let's work let's set up a schedule like this that maybe is a little more flexible than what you usually have, but the student recognizes that they're responsible for bringing work, or at least bringing their thoughts to you at regular intervals. So just the idea of negotiating and even expressing fears or anxieties. If it's your first term as a supervisor, maybe you're worried about making sure that you don't fail the student, or that you're there for them, or that you're not sure how you're going to respond. And you can tell them, there are things I'm not going to be able to help you with, but I have a network of colleagues and I will refer you where I think you need help. So just making sure everyone knows what's going on, so there are no real huge surprises later, is very helpful. Making sure that the communication is ongoing. So the idea of regular check-ins at whatever moments you like are very important to first of all keep the student sort of on track in terms of staying in touch, but also to broaden the scope of what you do in your meetings with the students. It doesn't always have to be about reviewing pages. It can be about just having the student check in on where they are. What are their achievements so far? What are their challenges? Have they been able to overcome them? If not, what can you help them with? What are their next steps? So it's like a progress report that should be ongoing. And that way everyone knows where the student is. And that allows you, if the student is facing big roadblocks, to find ways to help them, whether they're from you or from other resources. It also allows the student to feel that it's sort of normal to have these anxieties or to hit these roadblocks, which we all know it is, but we forget once we finish the process because we think it was easy for us. Or even if we think it was hard, we think we did it ourselves, which we did not. It's also a good opportunity on check-ins to talk about especially future plans and progress. And that's good for helping students continue to move forward. Another thing is in the kind of feedback that we give, it's important, I think, very much to read past the writing. It's very easy for us, I would say for myself in particular, to move away from editing into reading content. First thing I want to do is pick up my pen and start marking the paper up. Well, I think we have to be very, very careful to say, look, there are going to be problems with the writing. Just go in thinking there are going to be problems. Some things won't be clear. Some things won't be beautiful. Doesn't matter. Let me see what's going on here. What has the student been able to accomplish? What have they gotten across clearly? Where are there some stumbling blocks? Where are things not clear? Where do things seem a little bit confused? And you identify those. And then these are things you can talk to the student about, either by writing marginal notes that ask more questions, or say, I'm wondering if you've thought about this. I really like the way you did this, but I think there's more development here. Or giving that feedback and then asking the student to come in and then discuss those things and tell them very specifically, at the next meeting, I'd like you to read over my comments on pages and we'll talk about how you might move forward, or what you have thought about to adjust those. asking questions, even whether it's in the margins on the paper or in person, is really important because sometimes students have great ideas or have made very good points, but it hasn't come across. And rather than saying, I don't know what this means, this doesn't make any sense, we can say, all right, I'm not quite sure what you're getting at here. Can you talk me through it? And very often the student can give you a very clear explanation of what they're trying to say. All they have to do is then write that down, which is easier once they've talked it through, which is why the idea of writing among others creates a community is so important. We can also share thoughts on other avenues to explore based on our own expertise or based on research that we have seen, whether we've read it or not. We can say, I know that so-and-so has done work on that. Go talk to them. And also to identify places where the students themselves can grow their community through conferences and associations. There are also writing groups on the university. You can, if you have a number of students working on something similar, or even if they're not, you can form your own writing group just so that students can come in and not necessarily even write together, but talk to each other about their challenges and share strategies for moving forward.
Great. Thank you, Marlene, for your expertise around graduate writing and for the thoughts and strategies you shared with us today.
You're very welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
Now I'd like to share a few resources with you. There are two QR codes on the screen. On the left-hand side, you can scan the QR code and it will take you to the Graduate Supervision Toolkit website. On the right-hand side is the QR code for the Writing Center Guide for Graduate Student Support, and I'll be walking you through it now. All right, so this is the Writing Center Guide for Graduate Student Support. And we wanted to make sure the message was clear that writing is central to graduate success, but it is not a solo journey. So we designed the guide to spark reflection on the often hidden aspects of graduate writing, particularly in relation to the importance of graduate supervision and communication. So in the guide, you'll find the Writing Center's role, also what it does and how it helps graduate students, also supervisors, committee members, and GPDs. The next section we have is challenges in the graduate student writing process. So in this table, we have a few challenges and then those challenges for the graduate students and also for graduate supervisors and strategies that supervisors can use to assist their students. So for example, one of the challenges would be expectations and perfectionism. So perhaps the graduate student is setting unrealistic expectations about the writing process, thinking that they have to produce perfect results in their writing all the time. So what could a grad supervisor do to assist their student with this? There's modeling. There's also reminding students of realistic outcomes during the writing process, as well as having regular check-ins, which Marlene mentioned. We also have challenges such as conversations. So there's a fear of feedback, isolation. What if the students are feeling overwhelmed? What can grad supervisors do to assist? Then development and support. The next section is the graduate supervisor-student writing relationship and interactive model. So here we want to try to inspire an environment where the graduate student feels free to express themselves and fulfill their goals. And supervisors not only provide guidance, but they can also consult with the student on how they best receive that guidance. And when grad writers feel empowered, they're able to advocate for themselves and their academic and professional goals, they're able to accomplish those goals more frequently and with more confidence. The next section we have is a table titled Supporting the Writing Process, shared roles and responsibilities. Here we have on the far left side are the writing support components. For example, goal setting, expectations. Then we have what graduate supervisors can do. And in the far right column, we have what graduate students can do. So for example, with goal setting, supervisors can ask their student what skills they hope to build in achieving their projects. The graduate students can consider and express to their supervisor what they hope to achieve, how they hope to achieve it. Expectations. Marlene mentioned this as well. Clarifying expectations about how the writing process could work. What are milestones? What are some guidance that the supervisor can provide? What are some potential resources the supervisor can share with the student? The student, for expectations, can share with their supervisor how they work best, what type of feedback they find most helpful. Then we also have conversation, guidance, feedback, professionalization, and resources. We also include a section on demystifying academic writing. We include Graf and Birkenstein's They Say, I Say, the moves that matter in academic writing, which is a rich resource. We also include a starter template to form introductions and identify key ideas. We have an outline of the 4-stage citation process. And then we also offer links to the Thomas Garland Library website that has many of the Graf and Birkenstein templates. And we also have a link to the Manchester Phrase Bank. We've included supplementary writing sources. We also have the York University resources and contacts. So we acknowledge that these are specific to York University. So we encourage everyone watching to seek out similar resources and support services at their own institutions. We've included some modeling, mentoring, and writing resources and their links. And we finish up with blogs. Thank you everyone for joining us today for this Sparkshop on guiding graduate writing. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Marlene or me. Bye.